As spring training gets rolling along today, we want to take a moment to preview the Cardinals prospects and minor league system with two of our good friends over here, Kareem Hack, as always, which you guys know from Birds of the Farm, and Kyle Reis on this episode of Deal on the Cards. Welcome back into Deal on the Cards. It's Sandy and I today, fresh off a fun Brendan Donovan interview. If you guys missed that from this weekend, go check that out. It was a really awesome conversation. But today we're ready to change gears and look more toward the minor leagues and the future of the St. Louis Cardinals. Today we're joined by Kareem, which you guys know from Birds on the Farm, but also Kyle Reis. Kyle, we're excited for you to join on today. Obviously, you've gotten, whether it's Twitter or now Walton and Reis on Wednesdays, you're always staying active within the Cardinals sphere, especially with prospects. But for those who don't know you already, can you just introduce yourself and tell our listeners kind of what your experience has been like in terms of following the Cardinals minor league system?
Hi, I'm Kyle. I'm 38. I'm a Leo. In my advanced years, I've put on a little extra dough. Not cash dough around the mid. It's gotten kind of out of control. Look, I'm from St. Louis, born and raised in St. Louis. I have three older brothers. They were all big athletes. I'm the least athletic of the four of us. My dad grew up when I was growing up. My dad was an usher in Busch Stadium out in left field bleachers. It was a whole thing. I kind of grew up in the left field bleachers. Somewhere along the lines, because of that and my love of the Cardinals, I got really into the minors when I was a preteen, which, again, I'm really bad with words, so don't think too much of what I just said. But I guess if you're going to be in the minors, you want to be a preteen. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. So there's that. And then shortly thereafter, like after you get through high school, and that's when the internet was really ramping up and you could actually start to find minor league stats at places. But all it was like incomplete stats here and there, and tracking it all was really hard. And I was also really stupid, so I didn't go to college right away. I went to community college right away, and all my friends went down to Missouri State, in Springfield, Missouri, which is where the AA team, of course, is affiliated. So I would go visit my friends, and we would go to the Cardinal games, Springfield Cardinal games, and then I get to know them, and I would follow it. And then, I'm a loser, so I didn't really have a social life outside of that, and that allowed me to follow the minor leagues as if I was a hermit inside of my home. And then from there, what would happen is I would sit there on Twitter and I would tweet out things and no one cared or whatever. And then there was an online website I will not rake, and they were really bad about giving these comparisons about what prospects could be in the mind. Like, once Harrison Bader makes it to the majors, he's going to be Ken Griffey Jr. And it used to drive me nuts. And so I asked a gentleman named Dan Buffa if I could write an article about Colton Wong, I think it was, to try to dampen down, as if anybody was going to read it. It probably got like 14 views, and it might even have been me clicking on the thing 14 times, hoping that somebody noticed. And I got so frustrated, and I guess this is ego-driven, but I got so frustrated with bad comps and, bad information being disseminated that was not fair to the players, because I end up being a people person. I like to think of myself as the people's champion. So I started writing, and I would write nonsense. And then John Nagel, who is Cardinals Farm, he had a huge following. He was the proto Cardinal prospect guy. He started a website called the Redbird Daily, and he asked me to write with him. And that would have been maybe 10 years ago now at this point. And that's probably when I compiled my first written, publicated prospect list. That wasn't just like me listing it on Twitter somewhere. And from there, a couple of years later, Cardinals Gift started Birds on the Black, and he asked me to be a part of that. And then somewhere along the lines, PAD came along, Prospects After Dark. And that started off as something harmless and sweethearted and quiet. And then that went into something that I probably can't even talk about on most podcasts, usually with my shirt off, drinking like a sailor. And so all of that is a very long way of me saying that I don't know what this is. I don't know where it started or how we got here. And welcome to the chaos. And I'm sorry for any harm I caused along the way.
If that didn't sell people on checking out all of your content and trying to find that Colton Wong piece, now I'm going to make it my mission. I don't know how I'm going to find it, but I need to figure out where that is and read it now. I'll add the 15th view to it. But hey, we talked about this a little bit pre-show, and we're excited because you said you've been working on this. But okay, so you've given you like to self-deprecate yourself a lot here, but like I think most people, especially if they know you, Kyle's legit. And so if you're into prospects, like I know we're all big fans of Kareem over here too, but Kyle's really the OG when it comes to this. And so one of the things that I was really interested in is just in your time of following the Cardinals minor league system, what are some prospects that you were high on at one point that you're just like confused, or like how did this turn out so poorly? And then on the flip side, what are some prospects over the years that you're kind of like, okay, the industry didn't really catch up on them when you look at what name, whatever prospect outlet it is, or scouting outlet, they didn't necessarily rate them very highly, but you could kind of see early on that there was some potential in some guys. So two sides of the coin. What are some misses you've had over the years, and what are some of those hits you've had?
So there were two reasons why this came up, and one fed into the other. Is I was thinking about Nick Plummer the other day. I've got this thing sometimes where I wake up thinking about prospects. This is not me being goofy. I swear to God. And this dates back to like months ago. I woke up thinking about Trajan Fletcher, and I was like, first off, what's wrong with you? And second off, you need to be medicated for whatever you're dealing with. So not Trey Fletcher. I was always pretty down on Trey Fletcher, but like Nick Plummer is one of those guys. And I think this is where I end up getting in trouble a lot, is it always seems to be the guys that I buy into after the fact. So like Nick Plummer, I was down when they drafted him, and I was down on him. And then when he started turning things around, I overbought in. And because you would watch him, and there's a lot of things that I really love about baseball that maybe necessarily don't translate well at the major league level. So like when you're watching somebody kind of slap the ball around all over the place and on a line, and you don't really have the data there. Data was different even 3 years ago or 5 years ago to what we have now, especially at the minor league level. It was impossible to get that data, So Nick Plummer is one that I did not buy into at first, but then I overbought into. And as a matter of fact, to throw myself on the fire, I hated the fact that they did not add him to the 40-man, that they let him walk as a minor league free agent. I thought that would come back and bite him, and it did not. It didn't even get close. Angel Rondon is another one. I thought for sure Angel Rondon would be a major league, maybe not a starter, but, I hated Dakota Hudson. And I thought at the very least he could be Dakota Hudson. But keep in mind that wasn't like the Dakota Hudson that everybody else saw. That was the one that I hated. So, I thought Angel Rondon would turn out to be something that would be more than just like a 4-inning spat and as a major league debut and then nothing else. I think that there's a Dylan Carlson of it all. Again, kind of the same thing there. I was kind of down on him. And then I started hearing some rumors about, as he entered his age 20 season at AA, about how he had changed his body, changed some mechanics. Everybody was really looking forward to it. And then to see him like AA on fire, and also have really tough at bats against top prospects and come out on the positive side of that. I felt pretty sure that was, and again, I was the guy who was like, at the most, he's going to be Andre Ethier. Everybody this isn't an MVP candidate. This is a really good player. Nick Markakis, something like that. He's another one that I think I definitely overblew how good he was capable of being. I wish I had the list with me. I think it's guys like, guys like Delvin Perez, you end up buying into a lot of it. I think even last year, like Jonathan Mejia, not to bust Jonathan Mejia down, but what happens is you start talking to people and you start hearing what they have to say, and you're like, man, maybe I'm just off. Maybe I'm just missing, and then you'll look into it and you'll see some things and you'll be like, man, I really think this guy could be something.
To play off that, before you go into maybe more your hits a little bit here, is there any guys that, because you've mentioned a couple of times that where you've run into troubles when someone else has kind of talked you into it, have there been some examples of a guy you can think of where like you didn't buy in at first, someone else told you to give it a chance, and then you're like, okay, now I see it, and it did pan out?
Yeah, in some ways, I guess one of the people that I was ahead of a little bit was Juan Yepes. And I was dismissive of Juan, even though like when he first made his debut at Peoria, his first stint at Peoria, I was like, all right, I can kind of see why the Cardinals were interested in this guy. But then I started hearing a little bit of buzz. And of course, his dad is super active. And a lot of times if you start tweeting about players, family members, will kind of dump in and out. And he was kind of Omar Yepes was kind of the first one to be like, no, Juan's due for a breakout. And then in limited action at AA, he started like hammering the ball. And then, a couple people that are affiliated with minor league baseball would say, I think, Juan Yepes is putting up actual exit velocities. Like, you're going to want to keep an eye on that. And because of that, you end up getting aggressive with somebody like that. And, I probably another person I was a little over aggressive with, in like the same vein. I was probably a little over aggressive with Alec Burleson, but a major leaguer, somebody with major league potential, major league staying power in a certain role, whatever that role might be. So he would be one of the first ones that come to mind in that regard.
Okay. And then is there any like others that you would say so people were lower on, or you just didn't really hear the name very often, but you felt like, okay, I was kind of ahead of the curve on those guys?
Yeah, the two that come to mind, and again, I don't like this part of it, but I think I'm still kind of the high man on Ryan Helsley, even though he's like a top 50 player in baseball. He's one. Back in that, you think back to that time, like that would have been 2016, 2017. I remember when they brought him up, he was just a flamethrower. Like, to everybody, he was just a flamethrower. And I remember watching him at AA and being like, no, this guy's a starter. Like, what are we doing? Sure, he needs to refine the curveball. He needs to refine his changeup. But, the fastball slider was good enough. It just needed some time. Back in that time, yeah, a lot of times, and this is no disrespect to Yadier Molina, but Yadier Molina would be the one who would make the decisions. He would have a huge input in the pitching decisions. And, that's why you saw a lot of those pitchers in that era, that 2015, maybe even 2013 to 2019 in particular, where they would just eliminate pitches altogether because Yadi would say, you're not going to use these pitches. And then you'd see them shoehorn into bullpen roles because they'd only use 2 pitches. And that was just what Yadi wanted. That's what Yadi saw. And he was the best catcher in the world. So you believe the guy who sees it firsthand. Same thing kind of happened with Jordan Hicks. I was not ahead of Jordan Hicks, but I was definitely big on Jordan Hicks. It's hard to be like ahead of the industry when you're talking about a guy who throws 100 miles an hour and was a 96th overall pick or whatever. So, and then, the other one that comes to mind just in recent is Brendan Donovan. That was another one. You saw him at Peoria. And I remember it would have been after the COVID year in 2021. I thought for sure he'd start at AA. It didn't make sense to me why they assigned him to Peoria. It turned out he had a really bad minor league camp entering 2021. And I remember being livid online about the assignment of Brendan Donovan and everybody being like, dude, it's who is it now? Like, what are we talking about? So I was a little ahead of that. And that's because in 2019, he was doing those things, like I said, that I tend to overvalue, which is slapping the ball around and also taking really good at bats, kind of spitting on the pitch that's on the black. And also, like, he had speed that people weren't talking about. Like, he doesn't have elite speed, but I saw people labeling him a below average runner. He's not that. He wasn't that then. And also like a below average fielder. And I would watch him play second and third and say, you know what? He's actually pretty good out there. Like, it's not great. It's not amazing, but it's pretty good. Like, he's going to be able to play second without trouble at the major league level. And then kind of like to go back, because I hate talking about all the good stuff, to go back, another person I was wrong on in a great degree was Andrew Kisner. I thought for sure Kiz would have a run as a starter at the major leagues. And he just never had it. He could never turn the corner. The framing issue was the framing issue, of course. Of course, the internals that the Cardinals had on his framing were a lot different than what we got publicly. But, and of course, we saw that last year when he was with Texas. We saw some of those framing stats start to turn around a little bit. But, that was a guy who would just find gaps. He was a gap-to-gap hitter, a lot of times the opposite field gap. And I thought for sure that would translate. It didn't matter if it was an off-speed pitch or a fastball or whatever, even changeups. He'd be able to find that opposite field gap, and that just never translated it in the major leagues. So, that's enough of me ranting. Kareem, how are you today?
I'm doing good. I actually have a question for you, Kyle. Piggybacking off what we just talked about, Moises Gomez was someone that after his I can't remember what year it was, but his first year as a Cardinal, he was signed as a minor league free agent, and he burst onto the scene. I think he won Texas League MVP that season, but I was super bullish on him just from a batted ball data standpoint. I thought that he could he struck out a lot, but I thought that the batted ball performance would be quality enough for him to carve out a role in some capacity in the major leagues, but I was absolutely wrong about him. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on Moises Gomez and how you viewed him as a prospect.
I was excited when they signed him, when they brought him in. I did not expect him to be as amazing as he was. That would have been 2021 when he entered the organization. And I think a lot of us were still very confused. I think everybody, even some of the smartest people in baseball, were still confused about the talent level at the minor leagues. And I think we thought, he got off to such a torrid start in 2021 that I think some of us thought, myself included, I was pretty vocal about it, that eventually we get into June, the talent level would level off. The pitchers who had missed the prior year just throwing bullpens would end up getting into midseason form, and he would tail off. But he did not. He just kept hitting and kept hitting and kept hitting. And I remember, it'd be the same pitcher 2 weeks apart. It'd be a 1-2 pitch, a fastball up, he'd swing through, and then 2 weeks later, the same pitch, same circumstance, he'd crush it 450 feet or whatever. And when you see things like that and you see it night after night, you think to yourself, and this is another thing with Eliris Montero too, you would see this with him, but they'd make adjustments, quick adjustments, and you think, all right, sure, he makes some bad swing decisions and he swings it too much, but he's learning on the fly too. And, he had put on more muscle. He had lost some of the baby fat that kind of held him back. He was healthier, understood his body a little bit better. And it just seemed like with Russ Steinhorn at the helm, with the minor league instructors, because the hitting side's been pretty good for a couple of years now, especially Tiger Peterson, who was at AA then, as the hitting coach. It just felt like he had taken a step to understanding himself better. But the problem is, if you're a free swinger, you have to have good contact. Otherwise, every at bat is flirting with disaster, and you have to be on it, because a lot of times you're guessing. I mean, like with Moises Gomez, we came to find out he's just up there guessing. Really, he had a plan, but he was up there guessing. And when he stopped getting fastballs and fastball counts, it hurt him, because then he didn't know how he was going to be hit with breaking pitches. So look, I think I had him entering that year. I don't think he was an honorable mention. I think after 2021, I think I had him 8th overall, because what do you do about a Texas League slugger with a profile like that? Yeah. And then, all it took was maybe a half of the 2022 season. And it was obvious, unfortunately, that he wasn't going to be what we all thought he could be.
Yeah. Have you ever had that experience where you identify like a surplus talent on another team and you're just like pulling your hair out, wishing the Cardinals would recognize what you see and go get that guy? Have you ever had that type of thing happen?
Yeah. Every once in a while it happens. It's funny. Like I am completely blanking on names right now. Is it Ryan Pepio, the right-hander who's with Tampa now?
Yeah.
I remember watching him the first time, and he was kind of like a 10 to 15 prospect in their system. And he was just throwing fastballs right by a really talented Springfield lineup. And I remember thinking like, oh, wait, like, no, that's a major league arm. Like that's better than anything the Cardinals have at Springfield. And it's probably better than anything the Cardinals have at Memphis. And that was even like his first time through. I think he struck out 7 batters, and 7 of the 9 batters he faced, and all he threw was fastballs. And I thought, okay, well, I haven't seen a fastball like that in the Cardinals organization in 4 years, so this is cool. But yeah, every once in a while, I think, and maybe Kareem can attest to this a little bit better. When I wasn't writing how I used to write, before I started writing, before I was a part of Birds on the Black, and I wasn't watching 4 minor league games a night. When you're watching one and focusing on players and individuals, it's a lot easier to focus in on opposing players.
Yeah.
In certain at-bats, like if Tink Hence is pitching, I do want to know who he's pitching to. Just like with Dylan Carlson all those years ago, I want to know who the premier talent is that he's pitching to, so that I can kind of judge how he's doing against it. But when you're watching 4 games at night, and I have audio from all 4 games going at once.
Oh,
so
goodness.
It's, I guess 3 games, because Palm Beach isn't on at once. It's only on maybe, I guess, 40% of the time now, maybe 35% of the time. So I'm listening to at least 3 games at once, and also the Cardinal game, which is usually on my television. So it is a true cacophony of noise. And just because I've been doing it for so long now, I'm pretty decent at being able to sort it out, as long as the announcers' volumes are on an even level. If one's way loud, I can't focus on anything else. And then you try to like match them in the volume bar, and then it always messes up my feed. I don't know how that works. So it's become increasingly more difficult to do things like that, to point things out. Locklear for Seattle is another one. I remember him at AA thinking, oh my God, like that guy has a chance to be a menace. But anyways, that's a long way to say that, like, those are really the only two that pop out. It has happened, but a lot of times, like, you're already so focused on it. So yeah, there you go.
No, I gotcha. To go a little bigger picture here, I guess, we're usually more focused on the major league side over at Deal in the Cards. And we've had a lot to say about the lack of action of the front office. I mean, they haven't spent a single dollar in free agency. Kind of crazy. But below the surface, right? So in the minor league levels, and especially in the player development side, there are a lot of changes being made. Do you think those are encouraging changes? What's your take on all these moves?
Yeah, anytime you talk to anybody who has any affiliation or any vested interest in it, and I talked about this last night a little bit with Brian Walton on Wednesdays with Walton. Communication is the word you keep hearing. That the communication within the organization, from top to bottom and extending even to the players, is at a level that it hasn't been at in a very, very long time. Maybe even since Correa, maybe even since Lunau. Like even then that was kind of weird because they were kind of sectional away from each other. But the organization is functioning right now from a communication standpoint, from top to bottom, on a level that it has not. If it's to be believed, of course, in years, and everybody seems to be getting on the same page. Of course, you have some old holdovers who are just kind of still doing their thing, and we'll see where that goes. But I do think, as somebody who was moments ago very critical of the pitching development in the organization over the years, that, and again, no disrespect to Tim Levesque, and obviously because he's a really awesome guy that everybody loves, who just wasn't in the right role for his capabilities and what he was good at. And of course, I'll leave Grandpa Gary LaRocque to you guys. I'm not going to say anything about that. But they needed this. This is something they needed. And, John Mozeliak said at winter warmup, it was about a 20% increase in their minor league budget. And I would imagine that number is going to continue to grow over the next couple of years. And yeah, look, everybody it's nothing but positives to be said about nearly all of the hires that they've made, and not just from within the Cardinals organization, but when and I know Kareem could probably attest to this, but like over the years, it's not just people in the Cardinals organization or other organizations, it's prospect writers from other organizations who you talk to. So like, when you go and get Ethan Goforth, so, people from that organization who follow that organization are like, no, like, you don't understand. Like, this guy, he's a savant. He knows what he's doing. And it wasn't just with him, but it was all the way down. Every time a new hire was announced, it was somebody from following a different organization or in a different organization who I talked to very, very, infrequently, who would say, no, you guys got somebody. And then, you do a little bit of digging and you find that, like, part of that 20% increase to the minors, nearly all of it was salaries, but there were some players, some of these instructors that they had to go like 20% over to hire them from other organizations. So that's because of how highly thought of they are. Serfolio, I'm sure, is a similar circumstance. So it seems like they have the right people, not just for the Cardinals and some of their tendencies, but when you explore a little further out, there isn't a whole lot to complain about. The only complaint that I've heard, honestly, was about Brant Brown. Like, the only kickback that I got was really like, Brant Brown, we could take him or leave him, and it wasn't just from a couple of people. Like, it was kind of like, all right, but because the Cardinals haven't had somebody who's willing to, the Cardinal players at the major league level haven't had somebody that they've been able to listen to and who has a vast array of knowledges. It is like an awakening for a lot of the hitters, at least to feel listened to. So yeah, I think it's all positive. I'm glad they did it. And I still don't know what happened at the major league level with that roster. That's something else.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump into that part next. Kareem, how about you jump in first, and then we'll get Kyle's take on it. Like, I'm personally, like, the fact they didn't spend money isn't a huge deal to me, because I was kind of actually for the idea of maybe taking a step back, let the young players play, figure things out. But then they didn't really create a lot of, in my opinion, they didn't really create a lot of space for young players to play. Lineup's basically the same as last year, and the rotation is set to be four veterans and Andre Palante again. Kareem, do you think they created enough space on the roster to actually give runway or space for the young talent? And then Kyle, what do you think on that too?
I don't think so at this point, but injuries can obviously happen. They could obviously make moves at the trade deadline to open up spaces. And if, Cooper Jerpy is killing it at AAA, Tank Hens, Quinn Matthews. Maybe we could see them push their way into that big league rotation at some point this year. But I wish they did put more of an emphasis on creating some spots, whether it be, moving on from Miles Michaelis, who at this point is just not a major league caliber pitcher. I don't think it makes any sort of sense to have him on the mound every 5 starts rather than someone like Michael McGreevy, for instance, who displayed, that he could pitch at the next level in the he only pitched a couple games at the major league level, but especially towards the back half of the year, seeing him, what he was able to do at Memphis, I think he's at least worth getting a look at to see what he's capable of at the major league level. And at this point, he could make the major league roster, whether, Steven Matz is in the bullpen or not. But I wish there was a little bit more of a runway. Another guy, Sam Robersa, I'm a little bit more bullish on him than Kyle, but I think that I'm at least interested to see what he's capable of at the major leagues. And I don't think there's really the runway for him to get that opportunity. And, even if, someone like, even if there are rotation spots available, halfway through the year, if there's a trade or something like that, I feel like there are guys ahead of Sam Robersa who are going to get that shot before him, which I'm not sure if we'll actually get a legitimate shot to see what this guy is capable of at the major league level. So, yeah, I wish they created more spots. I understand from the perspective of the Cardinals wanting to try to compete this year, or at least try to stay semi-competitive, but I wish that I wish they put all their eggs in the basket of evaluating their young talent, and I don't think they did that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No, I'm with Kareem. I don't understand where the opportunity is. I can't find it. I've been looking for a couple months now. And, maybe it'll come at Easter. Maybe when I go find looking for Easter eggs, it'll be an opportunity for a young player somewhere. I keep thinking about the pitching because I can't understand that at all. Not just the things that Kareem said, and Kareem's dead on. More than likely Miles Michaelis is beyond, he's over the hill. It's probably done with him. And they're going to keep telling you that covering innings is important, and it is important. It's not that important, okay? It's important if you have Aaron Nola covering the innings. It's important, they were making a big thing on the Cardinals broadcast the last time Michaelis pitched, where it was he's third in innings covered over the last couple of years, and it was the 3 best pitchers in baseball and Miles Michaelis. Let's have a little bit of context and a little self-awareness about what covering innings is and how it can be important. But what I'm really interested in is, and to Kareem's point about Sam Robersa, is it seems like they keep, instead of giving that next wave of pitching prospects and even a chance with an injury to make a major league debut, it's all right, we're gonna, and again, Kareem, 2 people Kareem was right about that I'm relatively wrong about is Kyle Lehigh and Chris Roycroft. And Kyle Lehigh, again, I think he can be because of being informed, I feel like he could be a really dynamic bullpen option. And, I love that he's included, he's working on a 2-seamer, a sinker. I think we've talked about that. That's important to his repertoire. I do not think it makes much sense for the long-term or the short-term health of the Cardinals organization for them to turn him into a starter and send him down to AAA. There's no reason for that. With Zach Thompson, we'll see what happens when they break camp. More than likely, he's going to go to the bullpen. But there's also a chance that Zach Thompson goes down to AAA as a starter, which is pointless. It doesn't do anybody any good. It doesn't do Sam Robersa any good. It doesn't do Ian Bedell any good, who's probably a reliever, probably has a reliever upside at most, but it doesn't do Ian Bedell any good. And you go down the line, it doesn't do Michael McGreevy any good to go back down to AAA. It doesn't do Michael McGreevy any good to go into the Cardinals bullpen either. That's not his optimal spot either, even if he does have success in that role. So that's my thing with what's going on at the major league level. I do like some of the utility options that they brought in, Hellman, Barrero, because I like Thomas Sajaci, but it doesn't really make sense for him to, if he's not going to play short and spell Mason Wynn every once in a while. That doesn't make sense for him to be a platoon righty off the bench. Barrero has an interesting upside, and Hellman is there to be there if you need him to be there as that player who's there. And I think that, I don't see opportunity. And then the issue is I don't see a pathway to opportunity for a lot of players either. I think that they're log jamming and not log jamming. They're like backlogging themselves with options. And it's been really fascinating to me to see maybe some of the decisions they're making along the way.
I have one more for you guys real quick, and then we'll get into some individuals. But fixing a minor league system is really hard. And the Cardinals system obviously bled dry at some point. Like Dakota Hudson's the only homegrown starter that made meaningful appearances over like a 3-year span, which is crazy when you think about that. But it's going to take time. Obviously, these changes are really exciting. What's the timeline here? Like, when do we start to see evidence of these changes at the major league level? Let's do Kareem and then Kyle. Just get both your takes on that.
I think as early as this year, if we can get, Quinn Matthews getting a run, which I do believe he will at some point. And just speaking on Matthews a little bit, I know we've talked about him a lot on this podcast and on Birds on the Farm, but I don't think there's a more surefire starting pitching prospect that the Cardinals have had in quite some time. Like, I think when you look at the pitchability, the durability, the kind of stuff that he has, I think it's all there for him to be a starter. And I think, sooner rather than later, we're going to see this guy at the major league level. And I think he has all it takes to be an MLB caliber starting pitcher. So we could see that, starting this year, if he gets an extended run. And obviously last year, getting a chance to see Andre Palante blossom the way that he did, if, like you said, it feels like a while since the Cardinals have, developed a homegrown starter. But I really do believe that once we get some of these guys in the higher levels, Quinn Matthews, Tink Hence, Cooper Jerpy, because there's a boatload of talent up there. And I do think there are names from that list that are going to be major league starters. So, I think we'll see, starting, this year, I think we'll see going into 2026. I think we'll continue to see that ramp up. And I think it's on the horizon for sure.
Yeah, with the dawn, I guess, or the availability of pitch data, I think we'll see immediate changes. And I think a lot of those changes are going to be positive. As far as like actionable results, I would also think that by the time you get, to the end of the year, you'll see, especially on the pitching side, a lot of actionable results where it's not just the data we're seeing. We're also seeing the results to accompany the data on the pitching side. As far as a turnaround goes for the organization, I think it just, there's just so many variables that are still up in the air. I would say that the next 3 months will really dictate what the timetable is with the St. Louis Cardinals. Maybe not 3, because because I'm a 38-year-old, 4-year-old. So 3 months is March, April, May. So maybe 4 months. Over the next 4 months, you get into June. I think that'll dictate the timeline for long-term success for the St. Louis Cardinals. If they are 20 games under, 10 games under by the beginning of June, then that probably means that their timetable is 2028, 2027 at the earliest to be a competitive team if they're committed to not spending money. But if they're around 500, then it's reasonable to think 2026, 2027 could be competitive years as well. And then if they get hot to start the year and Walker's taking steps and Herrera's taking steps and Gorman's taking steps and Nootbaar's taking steps and Donovan is who he is, and Arenado is some amalgamation of 2 down years, 1 awful year, and then 1 MVP level year. If he's some amalgamation of that, and the pitching is healthy, and the 4 olds, and the 1 Andre Palante that they have in the rotation hold up, then there is reasonable to think with gains at the minor league level that this is something that doesn't exactly have a hiccup. Of course, that is like the 5% opportunity, the 5% chance of happening, the 10% chance. So I think it's a varied timeline that's just going to depend on how the kids stay healthy and work out. But I do think we'll see immediate returns on pitching. And I don't know if this is going to be a good transition for you, but we're starting to see that already. And, I would love to get, not to steal questions. I've been actually,
great,
since Kareem and I have talked about it a little bit in DMs, but it was fascinating today to see some of the specs on Tink Hence, both his extension and his release point. And I wanted to get Kareem's thoughts on what he saw out of Tink Hence today. Unless there's something else you guys want to get to, and I'm sorry for jumping the gun.
No, it's great. Let's do a couple quick ad reads, and then we'll jump right into that, because I was
Awesome.
like, oh, we're 35 in, so I should probably do this real quick. But we do want to thank our presenting sponsors, 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles, located at 9640 All Boulevard in Olivet. They're open 10 to 5 Monday through Friday and 9 to 4 on Saturdays and Sundays. They buy, sell, and trade all sports cards and Pokemon cards, and have the newest selections of packs, boxes, and single cards of local players and stars from around the league. Make sure to go check out 314. And then we're also proud to be partnered with Underdog Sports, which is like all the way covering my head this time with this view. So you can see our promo cards right on my face. They're our favorite place to play fantasy games. You can play in Missouri, Illinois, and 40 qualifying states now. You got to check out Pick'em. It's so easy to play. You just pick 2 to 8 stats of players from around the league and choose whether they go higher or lower. You can win up to 20 times your money if you go 5 for 5. If that sounds like fun, sign up with the promo code CARDS and you get a first free pick and a first time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. We can't wait to see your entries. So I was really excited to jump into the next part. So I'll Kareem run with it, but I just want to preface it at the beginning. You guys can answer as we go through. It's really interesting that these changes, especially within pitching development, are happening at a time where, correct me if I'm wrong, but this feels like the most exciting group of young pitching prospects the Cardinals have had near the major league level in a long time. I can't think of a time when I can rattle off a Quinn Matthews, and obviously varying levels of ETA, right? So they're not all ready to pitch right now, but a Quinn Matthews, Michael McGreevy, Tink Hence, Cooper Jerky, Takoa Roby, arms like that have real potential. And so to see this be the time where these changes are happening, I'm really interested to get your guys' thoughts on the overall state of the pitching development and pitching pipeline side of things. But yeah, Kareem, jump in with what you saw from Tink today.
Yeah, so Tink Hence, his vertical release point was about half a foot down from what we had previously seen with his StatCast data, and his extension was also, or his vertical release was up and his extension was down half a foot, and I don't think that's particularly great for in terms of just his fastball specs. The pitch didn't have as flatter of a plane as it once did, which I'll be, keeping a close eye on this. I don't know if this was an intentional change or Hence isn't mechanically 100% just yet. But yeah, the fastball quality was a little discouraging today. Hopefully he can trend back to what we had seen, with his StatCast data that we had previously. But I will say the secondaries were really impressive. His slider used to be a 2-plane shape. Last year, he ditched it and he went towards more of a bullet slider shape. And that pitch played really well last year. And we saw the specs of it today. It's a true bullet shape at around 89 to 90 miles an hour today. The changeup, I don't think that's a pitch that particularly is going to stand out in terms of stuff. But what he does so well is just sell that pitch. And, out of his hand, it just looks like his fastball and it just tumbles down. And, hitters can't do anything against it. And that's just not lefties, right. He has great feel for that pitch against righties as well. And, the whiff rate was over 70%, I believe, which is just flat out absurd. Slider, changeup, I like those pitches. His curveball was a pitch that in 2023, he actually pocketed that offering. But 2024, we saw him, especially towards the back half of the year when his stuff was a little inconsistent. We saw him bring that curveball back in, and it's a harder pitch. Today, that offering was 84, 85 miles an hour, and it's not the biggest breaking ball, but at that velocity, it should play really well. And I think a lot of people gush about Tink Hence's stuff, and deservingly so, but I think his pitchability took a significant step up in 2024. And I think that's what impresses me the most about him. And yeah, that's what I got to say. Hopefully the fastball can trend back up, but I was really encouraged by the secondary stuff. And just watching him last year, those pitches were all impressive. So seeing the data now come out and being able to actually put a number onto it is it helps my analysis a lot.
Yeah. It's funny. His extension is really important. And now it might change if they've worked to, or if he's worked to change his release angle and his release point. It might change, but we've seen him lose command when he doesn't extend out. And we've seen him get injured oftentimes when he doesn't extend out. So I guess the digging I'm going to be doing is trying to find out if these are changes that the new gurus, that the new instructors are trying to implement with him. We kind of heard that we needed to be a little bit more patient with Tink this coming year as they worked on some things. So I'm anxious to find out if these are things that have been worked on or if these are natural changes that he did on his own. But that extension is one of the things I'm going to be keeping a really close eye on, because that seems like just again in the past, every time his extension gets tight, every time he doesn't extend out as much, his command goes, and then he starts having, pectoral issues or lat issues or something like that. So it is awesome to get the data. I'm anxious to see, especially with him, how some of these new specs we're seeing translate, throughout the season.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously really excited about what Tink Hens can be. We've already talked a little bit about Quinn Matthews, but we're going to go back to him real quick. Kyle, what do you see as like a successful outcome for Quinn Matthews this year? And what's the ceiling for a guy like that? I don't know if Cardinals fans have seen a pitching prospect like him in some time.
It's funny. I've been doing this thing lately where I can't decide who I want to rank as the Cardinals' #1 prospect. And the reason is because I can't make up my mind on JJ Weatherholt's pull power or Quinn Matthews' eventual ceiling. And I think yesterday was interesting, right? He pitched really great in a spring training game to the top of the Toronto Blue Jays lineup. And it doesn't mean anything. And, you're trying to find things. But I thought it was really interesting the way that the second time around, they kind of like started spitting on the pitch, especially his changeup low and his fastball low. They're just like, all right, we're not going to swing at that. And it could just be intentional. It could be whatever, the bases were loaded. He worked out of it. And what you always wonder, again, the specs on his fastball look probably better than ever. But what you always wonder is, especially with any pitcher like Cooper Jerpy, with any pitcher who doesn't throw 99 miles an hour, what can they get away with their fastball? Now, where I am with Weatherholt is I worry about Weatherholt's long-term pull power. His oppo gap power, his opposite field power is one of his calling cards. Everybody knows he has that. It's the pull power that I worry about. And I don't worry about, but I worry about it as like you're talking about potential MVP candidate, potential perennial all-star. Not like he's going to be fine. He's, like I told Kareem, and this is so lazy. I mean, so completely lazy. But he's either going to be some version of Brendan Donovan, or if he gets to his power just at the plate, if he gets to his power, he's going to be some version of Matt Carpenter, where all of a sudden he's hitting 30 home runs, driving in 100 runs, and you're like, all right, that was cool. He's also getting on base 39% of the time. This is really fun. Of course, with varying outcomes here and there. It's very dismissive, very diminutive. Like, I don't mean it like that. But with Quinn Matthews, I do wonder about his ultimate ceiling. And I think Kareem really does nail it when he says that this is about as major league starter ready-made as you can have, for all of those reasons and of all the mental side of it. He's driven the right way. He's crazy the right way. He's competitive the right way. And he's also self-aware enough. Like that's what we love about Andre Palante. Like, Palante is so self-aware, and he's willing to dig into some of his deficiencies in order to get better. And Quinn's the same way. So I do think that, like, where some people are saying, middle to back of the rotation, he's a surefire at that. I do think he can get to, again, on the high end with increased velocity, continuing tinkering, maybe refining the specs on a curve that he sort of ditched. I think that he could get to like a Zach Gallen level. Because Gallen had a Cy Young year, and then he's had a lot of really good years amongst some injuries, but like he could be a 2-3 amalgam. Like, I think that that's there. When, if you're playing the dice, if you're rolling the dice, if you're asking me to hedge my bets, which I do too often, I think that there's like that 3-4 is most likely. And also with the certainty, with a very low risk at that. So that's kind of where I'm at with Quinn.
I mean, and even that too, sometimes it feels like when you're talking about prospects, you call them a 3-4, it's like a diss at them, but it's an extremely valuable player. And it's like, how often have the Cardinals had to go out and get Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn, Jose Quintana, like all these guys, because they can't fill out those roles in the rotation. To have a guy like that they feel pretty confident can be that's a huge thing. And then, you know, like you said, like maybe there is some more in there, but if he's a 3-4, like that should be an exciting revelation for the Cardinals farm system right now, which feels like a low bar. It's not really a low bar. Again, that's an exciting player to produce, right? Like think of, well, never mind. I was make some comparisons. That might be some comparisons, but some two arms that you guys, I feel like, or I guess one arm that you two seem to be specifically high on that I don't think a lot of people talk about is Cooper Jerpy, and then the other is another that's maybe made some flashes in camp, and again has gotten praise over the years, but since he's come over from Texas has been injured a lot, and the numbers on the field haven't necessarily been eye-popping, but it's Tekoa Roby. Do you guys think that those two arms are closer to, or I guess for each of them specifically, do you think they're closer to the Tink Hence, Quinn Matthews conversation than people give them credit for when it comes to what their pedigree should be? And what makes them so unique and potentially special as pitching prospects?
All right, starting with Cooper Jerpy, I think what makes him so special is obviously the release characteristics. It's completely outlier. When you just look at his, pitch movement, his fastball in particular, I mean, it's only getting 6 inches of vert, but from that slot, it plays so well up in the zone. And on the episode, we had with Cooper Jerpy a few weeks back, like he talked about that, like he doesn't need crazy vert on his fastball for that pitch to play up. And, we've seen him just find so much success on that offering, even living in the 92, 93 range. And I expect that to carry over to AAA. And I think we've seen some pitching prospects in the Cardinals organization, when they get to that AAA level, you see a little bit less vert on their fastball. I think someone like Cooper Jerpy is not going to have that same sort of negative impact because he's not someone that's over reliant on that vert. He's just getting by with a really low sidearm slot on his fastball, and it's going to play as a plus pitch regardless. So I was impressed by his changeup. It's getting it got negative 5 inches of induced vertical break, which is, even for that slot, it's pretty outlier. His sweeper gets a ton of sweep. It is on the slower end of things, but just in those matchups, specifically against lefties, I think it's a pitch that he can work. And, he's obviously got that cutter. He talked about working with Jason Isringhausen on that pitch, and I thought that offering also took a step up. It's clearly his worst pitch. I think his fastball, changeup, and sweeper are definitely his 3 plus offerings that he should lean on the most. But that cutter helps to just give a different look, a gyro pitch that, he could use, especially inside to righties. And yeah, I think the arsenal is there. He does it in a really unique, special way. I think if you look at some of his stuff plus numbers, he might not impress you too much, but I wouldn't dig too much deep into that. His stuff is a lot better than, those numbers would indicate. And he's just a unique, special pitcher. And I can't wait to see what his 2025 season has in store, because if he's healthy, I think he could, I don't think Cardinals fans realize the kind of potential that Cooper Jerpy has.
Yeah, it's a couple things. The one area I just want to see him improve in is how he works the inside to righties, and it's been blown away. It's been blown out of the water a little bit. His ineffectiveness going in on righties. What he does is he misses by like 2 inches. He cuts his fastball or his cutter. He misses it by like 2 inches. And a lot of times righties are scared of it. Like you can see that righties are terrified of it. Even he threw 2 of them inside to Vladdy yesterday. And you could tell Vladdy, this is an interesting topic too, going from Quinn Matthews. Quinn Matthews throws the 0-1 changeup up in the zone. And Vladimir Guerrero Jr. looked at it and then looked at Quinn Matthews and he was like, are we going to do this? Is this what we're doing right now? But when Jerpy pitched, it was like, he threw the 2 pitches, the 2 fastballs in, and I don't remember in what context of the count. And Vladdy, at one point, Vladdy just kind of went like that. Like he just shook his head like, what is this? And then to go along with that, we saw StatCast basically break into 40 parts with every pitch that Cooper Jerpy threw, because it doesn't know what to do with those pitches. And I think that's a good indication that if Savant, if StatCast, if Hawkeye, whatever it is, if they cannot, like if they have trouble classifying it and quantifying it, and it's going through spring difficulties as well. So, but if they're having trouble, then hitters are too. I think that in the day and age of velocity, and everybody's chasing velocity, and reasonably so, because velocity matters. I think that when you see somebody throwing 92.7 miles an hour, maybe getting to 93, although there have been reports in camp that he's gotten up to like 96 and 95 and some change. I think that it's easy to kind of dismiss it. But we've also seen, to Kareem's point about like Stuff Plus, we've seen outlier pitchers with outlier release points and outlier arm action kind of defy Stuff Plus. Stuff, like every model of Stuff Plus is a little bit different still. And it doesn't seem like that's been taken into account properly. You know, the release angle is but not all of it is. So I watch Cooper Jerpy, and to me, as dominant as Quinn Matthews is, there is not a more fun pitcher to watch than Cooper Jerpy, because it's so weird and terrifying. And if you just take a second to be empathetic to the hitter and put yourself in the batter's box, it seems terrible. And that's pretty cool. And there aren't a whole lot of other starters in the minors that have that capability. And, I don't know. There's something special there. And it's just a matter of if he can find out how to cut the strike zone, cut the plate with his arm angle and that fastball to get optimal results against righties. That's what I think. I think once he finds that, and we saw him find that last year, and no one could touch him. He struggled with it at first. He found it last year, and he was striking out everybody. So I think there's something special there, no matter how you cut it, as long as he's there once he gets comfortable.
I just wanted to add on real quick. We get a lot of talk. People see his, low sidearm slot and think this guy's 100% a reliever. But what I will say to that is, when he's pitched deep into starts, this is someone that maintains his velocity. And even someone like Tink Hence, we haven't seen that. So I think, some of the reliever talk is a little premature with Jerpy. I think some of the injuries that he had a elbow, I don't remember, but it was a minor elbow surgery after his 2023 season. It was just a cleanup surgery. And then 2024, he just had inflammation. It wasn't a big deal, but the Cardinals just took it slow with him. I think a lot of the reliever talk is premature, and I think this is someone who has all the traits to be a starter if he could stay healthy.
Yeah, and then it's also too with when you hear people talk about prospects as relievers, it's almost damning. Like they mean it in kind of a damning way. And if it happens that Cooper Jerpy makes his major league debut out of the bullpen, then what's going to end up happening is he's going to be pigeonholed like Ryan Helsley was, because of how good he is. You won't be able to move him out of the bullpen because he's going to own that role. And when you're talking about somebody who has the potential to be a really high-end bullpen piece, like that's worth a top 5 spot in a team's top prospects, because every team needs that. Every team is dying for that, So I just to piggyback off of Kareem's point.
No, that's great. And then real quick, I mean, Roby's been catching a lot of eyes at camp so far. What do you guys, just any quick thoughts on Roby at all?
All I'll say really quick is I love it. I think the specs on the fastball, like once we started peeling back his fastball, we knew that there was going to, and also the stats, you could just see it at the stats, that he was going to struggle against righties. So if he has his velocity up and these little tweaks that he's made to his fastball to make it play better, then he goes from being that second tier of not the second tier, that's not fair, that like mid tier between first and top second tier starting pitching prospects, to being just up there in the conversation for me with Jerpy and Matthews and Hence. And I, not to steal his thunder a little bit, but I think Kareem and I are kind of on the same boat with Hence, even though we're starting to see the data where it's like, have we been overblowing Markevian Hence just a little bit? And that has nothing to do with his start today, but like there's real reliever risk with him too. Does Tink get more runway than like somebody like Tekoa Roby for whatever reason? So that's my quick thoughts. It was exciting to watch him pitch. It's been the in my opinion, the best pitching performance we've seen in spring so far.
Wow. Some high praise right there. One more guy. He's already made his major league debut. Let's talk about Michael McGreevy. A lot of people were not super high on the pick, and I get that. It looked like the next in a pitchability type lefty look the Cardinals have been going to. Kind of comparing it to the Zach Thompson pick. I saw a lot of people do that. Thought it was a low ceiling guy, but he impressed in his short major league debut last year, had a couple of really good starts. Now it looks like he's not going to get a chance right out of camp. How do you feel about that? Should he be starting? What's the ceiling with a guy like him?
All right, I'll take this one. But yeah, I do think there's enough for him to carve out a role as a back end type. And I'll be honest, I wasn't the most bullish on Michael McGreevy when the Cardinals drafted him. And, the first couple of years in his development, I thought that this was someone at best would be someone that, wouldn't have like a staple position on a major league roster. He would be up and down spot starter type, or if he did get a chance to break as a reliever, I think it would have been that. I think that he would have gotten in that direction rather than being a starter. But I've been impressed by, some of the improvements that he made, last year, specifically adding a bit more sweep to his slider. I thought that was big for him. And he had great feel for that pitch against both righties and lefties. I thought his four-seamer was a pitch that he started to bring back in 2024. And he was working that well at the top of the zone against lefties. And, he added a cutter as well. So I think he has all the pitches to maybe you'd like to see him turn over a better changeup. But I think he has the pitches to be able to get righties out, and I think at least hold lefties at bay decent enough to be able to have a chance to stick as a back of the rotation starter type. And he's shown all the durability to be a starter. I think the moxie that he has on the mound, he's got a really jumpy delivery that I'm personally a fan of, and he commands the zone really well. So I think it's all there in him to be that back of the rotation kind of starter. I'm not super bullish on him being more than that. I think he kind of has a limited ceiling to maybe like a 4 type. In his best years, maybe he could flirt with number 3 starting pitcher ERA, but I think more of a back end of the rotation piece. But I do think that I was encouraged by a lot of what I saw in 2024, and I think there's enough for him to be able to start at the major league level.
I completely agree. I think that there'll be times where he'll perform like a 2 against really aggressive lineups that are just going up there swinging on day games, getaway games, where all of a sudden he'll strike out like 6 over 7 innings and allow 3 hits and 45 grounders, even though he only faces 20 batters. And I think like most of the time, to Kareem's point, that's exactly what he's going to be.
Yeah. Well, we're already almost an hour in. We haven't even talked about the position players yet, so we're fly through this a little bit more. But I do want to quickly change our attention to, and you referenced him a little bit earlier, JJ Weatherholt, Kyle, the Cardinals top. I mean, universally, or I guess across the board, views the top prospect in the Cardinals system. Maybe you'll have Quinn Matthews above him at some point. We'll see. I something I've been kind of saying lately and toying around with the idea of, and I'd be interested to see if you agree with this or push back on this. He feels like a different pedigree of a prospect that's entered the system than we've seen in quite some time from the Cardinals. It doesn't mean he's going to be a star. It doesn't mean he's going to be the, like you said, MVP candidate, multi-time All-Star. But I can't think of another prospect who's entered the Cardinals system that's this highly regarded before they've gotten into the system, proven some stuff, seen some development. Those guys like a Walker, Carlson, Rose later. JJ's just like pretty much viewed right into the system as bona fide top prospect in Cardinals system, top 30 in the league. Would you agree with that, him being like a different pedigree of prospect? And if so, like what does that do from the expectations level as a Cardinal fan who's kind of been burned by, okay, and again, Jordan Walker's story isn't over. Even Dylan Carlson's story isn't over yet, but they've kind of seen the song and dance before of like, okay, another top Cardinals position player prospect. I've heard that before. If you would agree with that sentiment, what is different about a JJ compared to even some of those guys who've been around lately?
So this can be a 3-hour podcast, right? I could talk for 3 straight hours about fan expectations about prospects. No, it really is. If we're just talking about pedigree of draftee, Shelby Miller was a thing, but like, and there's been a couple guys, but it really is JD Drew. JD Drew is the only one who possesses, in the last the last amount of time, he's the only one who possesses that amount of prospect pedigree, of draft pedigree. So yeah, that like. It's a whole different thing. They haven't had this, a whole different thing. And as far as expectations go, and I think it's already terrible, is what I think. And I like, it's important to hear people like Katie Wu, the incredible Katie Wu, and everybody but John Denton basically say like loud this kid over and over again. I love John Denton. That's all I mean. That is but like just praise this kid over and over again for his poise and again moxie and like his excitement level. And part of what's exciting about him is where he came from. Like part of that excitement is where he came from. Because if he was a second, like if he would have been a 17th overall pick with his skill set, he would be impressive. It wouldn't be it wouldn't be as exciting as it is impressive. So like, again, I think he has the potential to be everything that everybody wants him to be, everything he's capable of being. He possesses the mind, the acumen, the athleticism for those things. But I've already heard people, and not just like those fringe lunatics, like some pretty smart people who talk about him making a debut in 2025. And that's not good for anyone to have those expectations. If it happens, miracle, beautiful, love it. Let's go. I'll be at that game. I don't care if it's in Botswana. I will be at that game. But let's not do that. Like, let's not do that. It's not good for him. It's not good for me. It's not good for Kareem. Kareem will have to deal with some of that, and it's not good for you guys in the long run. So that's where I'm at on all that.
Yeah, very exciting stuff. Obviously, JJ has a super high ceiling, but you're absolutely right. As fans, we gotta maybe pump the brakes a little bit on expecting him to be an MVP candidate right away.
Correct.
One more thing.
I know that you guys want to go over some, but I would like to get Kareem's thoughts on Weatherholt a little bit.
Yeah.
I think if it wasn't for the grade 3 hamstring strain, I think he probably would have gone first overall. And just like looking back at 2023, what he was able to do at West Virginia, if he repeated that season in 2024, I think he'd be picked over Travis Bazzana. But yeah, I think what impresses me so much is just the well-rounded skill set. This is someone that makes good swing decisions, probably has the best batting eye in the Cardinals organization right now. The bat-to-ball skills are really good. He impacts the ball. Sure, the batted ball profile in itself, you would like to see a little bit more for power production. But, dating back to 2023, when he was fully healthy, I thought that some of the batted ball, some of the sprays were there for him to make most of his bat speed and get the ball some loft. Maybe not to his pull side entirely, but he has that opposite field power that I don't think people talk about enough. But at Palm Beach, I thought that we saw him have more of a hit the ball spray kind of profile. The power production wasn't there. It was a small sample, but I thought that at least, he was doing a better job at hitting line drives more consistently than what he did at West Virginia in 2024. So that was at least encouraging. So I think the long-term, potential of a guy like JJ Weatherholt is going to hinge on that batted ball profile. Is he going to be able to hit the ball in the air consistently, or is this someone that's going to run above average ground ball rates, but have a sweet stroke that produces a lot of line drives?
Yeah, absolutely. One prospect around who I feel like Cardinals fans have a bit of prospect fatigue with. I didn't see nearly as many people talking about him this year, is Chase Davis. And maybe that's because there were some hiccups or something as he came into the system. Maybe it's because people saw a polished college hitter and thought he'd contribute right away. And when that didn't happen immediately, but what do you think about him? How's his development looked? And what are your expectations for him this year? Let's go Kareem and then Kyle.
Yeah, so my expectations, I thought that the first month of Chase Davis's 2024 season wasn't all that impressive, but I thought he really settled in, especially, his last month in Palm Beach. I thought the power production was finally starting to come to fruition, which you obviously want to see. We were just talking about batted ball profile. I think Chase Davis is someone that gets the ball out to his pull side a lot. So I think it's really paramount for him to be able to get the ball in the air for him to manifest that even more than a guy like JJ Weatherholt. Because you don't want to see this guy just roll over on ground balls. You want to see him do damage on those, fly balls to right field, which I thought that we saw more of, at the end of his tenure at Palm Beach. Was sent over to Peoria, I thought that, his ground ball rate at Peoria was pretty high, especially at the start of his time over there. But towards the end, much like Palm Beach, I thought that, he started to get into that power stroke, finished the season at Double-A. Not going to make too much out of the time that, he spent over there. But I'm going to be watching closely how the power translates, because I think from a bat to ball sense and, even the swing decisions, I'm not as, worried about that aspect of his game than just the power production, which if you told me on draft day, I would have laughed at you. But I think seeing the power production come to light more is going to be important for his profile to hit.
Yeah. Look, I like Chase Davis because he is about as sure of a power prospect as you have, but without the compromise of it. I don't think like some of the other power prospects are big question marks, like where else is the power in the organization? You're hoping Zach Levinson gets to some of the stuff that he showed. Maybe Josh Cross can get into some. Maybe Cade McGee can square himself away. Maybe Rainiel Ramirez. Maybe he can get into it far away. But look, I love Chase Davis. I love that kid. I love hearing him talk. I think he's smart. I think he knows himself. I think it's positive that we saw him be so bad last year and sort it out. We haven't really seen that with a first-round draft pick. It's usually a lot of success without having anything to sort out. So I think that these are all positives. And, Kareem gave you the timeline of how it all went. I was really impressed with his at-bats at Double-A. I don't have the data, but I just he seemed calm. And, that's probably me projecting more than anything. It's probably, it's so subjective that it's false more than likely. It's probably a false narrative I'm creating. But, he seemed ready for it then. And he's still going to struggle against lefties, but I love that kid. He's probably a corner outfielder, probably won't stick at center, although he has the athleticism for it, the arm for it. I think that watching people again turn on him after having kind of a rough debut in 2023 after being drafted, and then same thing to start last year, that makes me root for him even more because baseball's tough and he was kind of a raw prospect. So to see him kind of come into that, have a reasonable walk rate, a really impressive walk rate to go along with a K rate that was acceptable and pretty okay when you think about what his profile is. So I'm going to be just like Kareem says, I want to see that power go up, and I want to see what it does to both his walk rate and his K rate.
Yeah. I mean, we'll be watching those things this year then, obviously. Very exciting stuff there. And then one more guy, getting into some of the catching depth of the organization. Kareem and I have talked about him at length, but it feels like Jimmy Crooks is finally getting the attention he deserves outside of the Cardinals organization. You've had people here that have been high on him for a while, of course, but I'm seeing his name start to appear in some publications. What did he do this year to change that? What led to this breakout, and what do you see happening for him in 2025? Let's go Kareem and then Kyle again here.
Yeah, I think we saw him tap into that power a little bit more, but Crooks is someone that just he hits so many line drives consistently. I think he's one of the premier line drive hitters in all of minor league baseball, and he does such a good job at just getting the bat forward on those four seamers. I think some of the breaking stuff, people are unsure how he's going to project against higher level breaking pitches because the whiff rates on them at Double-A might not have been the best, but just from watching him, I don't have the data. I think there's enough hitability there for him to, maintain that, high level BABIP profile that he showed at Double-A Springfield. I'm not saying that he's going to hit at that level at Triple-A in the major leagues, but I think I'm bullish enough on the bat for him to profile as an above average hitter against righties. And the defense, Crooks is just someone that, pitchers love throwing to. And I just finished my eval on Ryan Campos, who, the Cardinals drafted last year, and Crooks fits the same boat as far as just, the kinds of catchers that the Cardinals have drafted, over the past decade. It feels like guys that might not be the most physically, talented players defensively, but are but are guys that have excellent in-game awareness, or, huge baseball IQ guys, big character guys, that pitchers at the next level are going to like throwing to. And, Crooks fits the mold of that. Obviously, Cooper Jerpy raved about him in that aspect on, our podcast with him. And yeah, I think, the defense should give him a solid floor. If the bat doesn't, come around at the major league level, but I am bullish on the bat. I do think that, this is someone that could be a 110, 115 WRC plus guy that I'm still a little unsure how he's going to translate against lefties. But at least as a platoon option who has some defensive skills that, pitchers love throwing to, I think, there's a lot to love in that profile.
Yeah, he's a Pedro Pages floor. That's if everything goes wrong, he's Pedro Pages. That's how I view it. And I think that's a positive. When you think back to his time, to how he's changed and how he's evolved, it's really been consistency. When he was in Oklahoma, part of the reason he was a 4th-round draft pick, other than some limited athleticism questions, was he just wasn't consistent. And again, the issue about hitting lefties, that's been around forever. But he just wasn't consistent back then. He would be really good behind the plate and then be kind of terrible at times. He's kind of ridden hard for the lead up to the College World Series in his final year at Oklahoma. And then he was a monster for this little college or regional, whatever it was. He kind of helped carry that team. And he just was really inconsistent. What he's been able to do is find consistency both behind the plate and at the plate. And that's what's kind of turned him in from a 4th-round pick to a top 5 to 8 prospect in the organization.
Well, I think this conversation is just, we've gone so many directions. It's clear we need to have you on again sometime, Kyle, because there's just so much we could talk about. Obviously, you've got Wednesdays with Walton Reis, though, that if you guys haven't been familiar with that podcast already, please go check them out. And Kyle, let's have you plug that at the end. But before we wrap up, I do want to ask both of you, what's one prospect we have not talked about today that you're just really interested? It doesn't mean they're going to, or you're saying, I'm trying to think of a Sem Robersa. Oh, I guess we did talk about it. But it's not just because you name Sem Robersa doesn't mean he needs to be a star. But who's a guy you're intrigued to watch this year and see what steps they can make in their development? Kyle, how about you jump on this first?
Well, it was the default. The first 2 names that came to my mind, and it's because I don't really know much about them, is Rainiel Ramirez and Yairo Padilla.
Yeah.
We need to find out everything we can about these guys because all the scouting information that's coming from the Caribbean area is glowing. The Cardinals are obviously out ahead, trying to get their names pumped in there. Although Rainiel Ramirez is really interesting because, and I don't know what I'm allowed to talk about, but he actually was raised in Philadelphia. So it's a whole thing there that's really interesting between the two of them. And I'm super interested in those two, and how they develop, because when you look at prospect, all of the prospect gurus nationally have included them in top 20 lists. And it's really just like us who are kind of pumping the brakes. Let's just wait and see what we have here. We've seen this turn out so bad for so long. And that, of course, Joshua Baez is another one because I just want to see how and what. But those are just the first couple names that come to my mind.
Yeah, I'll go a completely different direction than Kyle here and go with Matt Koperniak. I'm interested to see, how much run he gets at the major league level. I was really impressed by him in 2024. During that, 2023 off season leading into the season, the Cardinals put him on a bat speed program, and, the exit velocity numbers were significantly better in 2024. And as someone like Koperniak, who's more of a push hitter, is going to hit the ball to the opposite field a lot. I think having that added exit velocity helped him a lot. A lot of those singles turned into, doubles and home runs the other way. And I just can't wait to see, what, 2024 has in store for him. I think he's being a little overlooked just because of, his age, but he took a big step up in his development last year. And I think this is someone who I'm very bullish on.
Yeah. Kareem, Kyle, we've had such a great time tonight having you guys on. Again, Kareem, we always see you, man. But Kyle, we got to get you on here again soon. On your way out, can you just let people know where they can find you on social media, but then also Wednesdays with Walton Reis? Because that's been just, it was always great with Brian before, but it's just been really fun since you've jumped on with him too.
Well, thank you for saying. Yeah. I guess it's on the Scoops Podcast Network, Wednesdays with Brian Walton. I don't know what to say. I don't particularly like plugging anything I do. I'm kind of the worst representative. I just want to talk baseball and be goofy. But yeah, no, Brian's incredible. Brian is a great point man. He's dialed in. Brian's down at spring training right now. He's the only one who was at the pre-camp spring training camp, which sounds like you need a special password to be able to get into. And then he's down there posting on the Cardinal Nation, posting pictures of what's going on at step camp. And here in a couple days, minor league camp kicks on, and he's going to be down there providing the only continuous updated information. So it's just an honor to be a part of that with Brian. And I would recommend not following me in any capacity. I will be here and there, but the less people that follow me, the less trouble I get into. So I would appreciate it if you followed everyone other than me. I'm in enough trouble as it is.
Right when I started to ask questions, I had to finish it, but I was like, I know Kyle's gonna actually say, "Don't follow me," so I was like, "It's how it happened." Hey, and Kareem, you've got something you've got a plug. I mean, the website, which I know you've announced, we can talk a little bit about that, but also you've got a special video coming out, hopefully tomorrow, I think.
Yeah, something big is coming. That's. I'll just leave it at that.
Great, we'll leave it there. What a finish.
I'm very proud of you. That was awesome. I'm very, very proud of you. That is incredible.
Oh, I think it's perfect that we've just flown off the rails at the end here. So, hey, Kyle, thanks again for joining us. Kareem, we're excited for what's coming down the pipeline. Thanks for tuning in today, guys. Again, like and subscribe. Helps channel a ton. We'll be back this coming weekend to just overreact some more to some spring training nonsense. But until next time, thanks for tuning in. It's a Deal on the Cards.
Thanks, Kyle.